Lyria moved carefully among the twisted trees of the forbidden forest. The air was thick with mist, carrying the scent of strange flowers and damp earth. Every step she took made the soft ground beneath her feet sigh. She felt weak, very weak. The poison that had infected her body was spreading fast, and she could feel it burning inside her veins. Her heart raced and her legs trembled. Her kind, the Veyari, had a rare vulnerability. Only they knew the nature of this poison. It was subtle at first, almost like a cold shadow, but it grew stronger with every passing minute. Lyria had never experienced anything like this before. She had heard stories of other Veyari who had fallen victim, and most of them had never returned. Fear gripped her chest as she stumbled through the thick undergrowth. I can't let it take me," she whispered to herself. Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the whispers of the forest. Her vision blurred and the trees seemed to sway dangerously, as if the forest itself was watching her struggle. She tried to steady her breathing, but her body felt heavy, almost foreign. Suddenly she collapsed onto the mossy ground. Pain shot through her limbs and she gasped. The poison was moving too fast, stronger than she had imagined. Her mind swirled with fear. She wanted to call for help, but the thought of anyone finding her, especially humans, made her pause. Her people had always warned her about humans. They were unpredictable, sometimes dangerous, and never to be trusted. Yet as her strength faded, Lyria realized she had no choice. She needed help, or she would die here alone in this strange and silent forest. From the shadows, someone watched. A human. Kyle had been exploring the planet for months, studying its unique flora and fauna. He had learned to move quietly, to observe without disturbing the delicate ecosystem. Today the mist was heavy, and the forest seemed almost alive. It was beautiful but dangerous. And then he saw her. She was on the ground, trembling, her pale skin contrasting with the deep green moss. Kale's sharp eyes noticed the telltale signs immediately. He had seen many creatures sick from the strange toxins on this planet, but he had never seen one like this. She was alien, but her life force, fragile and fading, was clear to him. He ran to her, careful not to startle her. "Hey, are you okay?" he called softly. Lyria's eyes widened. She recognized the voice as human immediately. Her body stiffened. She wanted to push him away, to run, to hide, but she could not. Her legs felt like lead, her arms too weak to lift. The poison had already begun to take control. I don't need your help," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale shook his head gently. "I don't care." "You're poisoned. You're going to die if I don't help you. Please, let me help." She stared at him, conflicted. Every instinct in her body told her to distrust him. Humans were not her kind. They did not understand the delicate balance of her body. Their blood, their medicine, it could harm her. And yet there was something in his eyes. A calm determination, a refusal to let her die. Time was running out. Her vision blurred further. She felt her consciousness slipping. She realized she had only one chance. She could refuse and she would die here alone. Or she could trust him and hope his methods worked. Kale knelt beside her, carefully examining her condition. "I have something that might work," he said. "It's risky, but it might save you." Her heart pounded. She could feel the poison pulsing through her veins like a dark river. What is it?" she asked weakly. Kale hesitated. Then he extended his hand, showing a small cut on his palm. "My blood. Humans have enzymes that can neutralize some alien poisons. I can offer it to you. But it will hurt me too." Lyria froze. Her eyes widened as she stared at the red liquid dripping from his palm. Her mind screamed at her to pull away, to refuse, to protect herself. Humans did not give their blood lightly. To do this for her was unthinkable. No Veyari had ever been offered something like this. She looked into his eyes and saw something she had never expected. Sincerity, selflessness, a willingness to risk his own life for hers. The thought was alien to her, almost impossible to comprehend. Her body trembled, not from the poison but from shock. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "I am," Kale said simply. "I'll do this. But you have to trust me. I won't hurt you." The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The mist swirled gently, the trees standing like silent witnesses to this moment. Lyria's mind raced. She remembered the stories her elders had told her. Humans were bold, reckless, sometimes dangerous. But this human, he was different. He was risking himself in a way no Veyari had ever seen. Her strength was fading too fast. She knew she had only moments to decide. Slowly, trembling, she reached out her hand. Kale smiled softly, careful not to startle her. and smeared a small amount of his blood on the poisoned wound on her arm. The sensation was strange. Warmth spread through her body, chasing the cold sting of the poison. Her breathing began to slow. Pain still lingered, but the sharpest edge of it was gone. She looked at him astonished. It's working, she whispered. Kyle nodded, keeping his voice gentle. I can't cure it completely. The poison is unique to your kind. But I can buy you time. We need to reach the Crystal Springs. That's where your people's natural healing rituals can finish the job. The Crystal Springs? Lyria asked weakly. She had only heard of them in stories. A sacred place deep in the forest where the Veeri could heal from nearly any illness. It was far dangerous and few had ever returned from the journey. Yes, Kale said. We'll go there together. You're not alone anymore. Lyria felt a flicker of hope. Her legs were still weak, but she tried to stand. Kale supported her carefully, guiding her through the thick underbrush. Every step was a struggle, but the warmth of his blood in her veins reminded her that she could survive. As they moved deeper into the forest, strange sounds surrounded them. Alien creatures stirred in the mist, their eyes glowing faintly. Lyria flinched at every movement, but Kale stayed calm, keeping her close and shielding her from danger. They walked for hours. Lyria's strength returned slowly, and she began to notice Kale's quiet attentiveness. He studied the plants, watched for signs of danger, and never wavered in his focus on her well-being. For the first time in her life, Lyria felt a strange sense of connection to a human. She had always been taught to fear them, to see them as unpredictable and reckless. But this human, he was brave, compassionate, and willing to risk everything for someone else. By nightfall, they reached a small clearing. Lyria sank to the ground exhausted, but she was alive. The poison's hold had weakened thanks to Kale's blood. She looked at him, eyes wide. Why would you do this for me? She asked, voice barely audible. Kyle smiled faintly. Because no one deserves to die if it can be prevented. Not even a Veeri. Not even someone I just met. Lyria stared at him in silence. The forest around them seemed less threatening now. The mist no longer felt suffocating. She realized that for the first time she did not feel completely alone. Kale looked at the sky. The twin moons were rising, casting a pale light over the forest. We'll rest here tonight, he said. Tomorrow we continue to the Crystal Springs. You'll be safe as long as we keep moving. Lyria nodded slowly. Her body was still weak, but her mind was clearer. The warmth of Kale's blood, the courage in his actions, and his unwavering determination had given her something more valuable than medicine. Hope. As she drifted into a light sleep, supported by the human who had risked himself for her, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had changed forever, and so had her view of humans. Tomorrow the journey to the Crystal Springs would begin, and with it the beginning of a bond between two species that could change everything. The forest seemed calmer at dawn. Mist still hung between the tall trees, but the air was fresher, carrying the scent of damp leaves and wildflowers. Lyria woke slowly, her body stiff but alive. She stretched carefully, feeling the lingering warmth from Kale's blood which had slowed the poison's progress. She could still feel a weak ache in her veins, a reminder that the danger was far from over. Kyle was already awake. He sat nearby, carefully inspecting the strange plants around them. His eyes were alert, moving constantly, but they softened when he noticed her stirring. You're awake, he said quietly. Good, we should get moving soon. Lyria blinked, trying to focus. Her mind was clearer than the night before, but fear and caution still weighed heavily on her. She studied Kale, noticing the careful way he moved, the quiet confidence in his voice and the sincerity in his eyes. Somehow she trusted him more than she ever thought possible. You don't have to stay with me, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I could manage the rest myself. Kale shook his head. No, I promised I would help you reach the Crystal Springs. You're not strong enough to go alone, and I'm not leaving. Lyria's heart skipped a beat. No human had ever spoken like that to her. It was not just courage, it was care, concern, and a deep sense of responsibility. She wanted to say something, but her throat felt dry, and words failed her. Kale stood and offered his hand. Lyria hesitated for only a moment before accepting it. His grip was firm, steadying her as they moved forward. The forest was alive with sounds, chirping, rustling, and occasional distant roars. Lyria flinched at each noise, but Kale remained calm, guiding her with patience. Hours passed as they navigated through the dense undergrowth. Lyria tried to ask questions, but her voice came out weak. What are you? Why? Help me? Kale smiled faintly. I'm human, and I help because no one deserves to die if it can be prevented. Even if I don't know them. Lyria's eyes widened. Humans often help their own kind, she knew. But strangers, sacrificing themselves for someone they barely knew, it seemed impossible. Her kind valued survival above all else, and even the bravest among them would rarely risk themselves for strangers. As they moved, Lyria noticed something else. Kale was observant, careful, and thoughtful. He studied the plants, avoided dangers, and even made sure her steps were safe. He was not reckless like she had been told humans often were. Instead, he seemed deliberate, precise, and brave in a way that inspired trust. By midday, they reached a small clearing. Sunlight pierced through the thick canopy, creating patterns of gold and green on the forest floor. Lyria sank onto the ground, exhausted, but she felt safer with Kale nearby. Rest for a moment, Kale said, kneeling beside her. The crystal springs are still far, but your strength is returning. That's good. Lyria studied him silently. Your blood. It worked, but it's only temporary. Kale nodded. Yes, your people's rituals will finish the healing. My blood bought us time. That's all. But it was worth it if it kept you alive. She felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she realized humans could act with courage that went beyond simple survival. They could choose to risk themselves for others. Her own kind would rarely do this. They rested briefly before continuing. The journey grew harder as the day progressed. Thick vines blocked their path and the ground became muddy and uneven. Strange creatures peeked from the trees, watching them with glowing eyes. Some were curious, some dangerous. Kale always stayed between Lyria and the creatures, carefully moving forward without alarming them. At one point, a sudden movement in the shadows made Lyria gasp. A large predator, its scales shimmering in the sunlight, leapt toward them. Lyria froze, paralyzed by fear. Kyle reacted immediately. He grabbed a thick branch and held it in front of them both. Stay close to me, he shouted. The predator paused for a moment, sensing the human's courage, then circled, watching. Kale did not back down. He kept his focus on the creature, showing no fear. Lyria felt a surge of awe. She had never seen anyone face danger with such calm determination. Her fear slowly eased, replaced by trust. Kale's bravery gave her the courage to move again. Together, they slowly backed away until the predator disappeared into the forest. After the encounter, Lyria collapsed onto the ground again. She could barely breathe from exhaustion and fear. Kale knelt beside her, checking her pulse and ensuring she was okay. You're stronger than you think, he said softly, but you must conserve your strength. The journey is far from over. Lyria nodded weakly. She realized that without him, she would not have survived the forest so far. The poison still lingered, but Kale's presence and his blood had kept her alive long enough to continue. She felt a strange sense of connection forming, something deeper than gratitude. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, they reached a small stream. Water trickled gently over smooth stones and Lyria bent to drink. Kale watched her carefully, his eyes scanning the forest for danger. This will help for now, he said, but we can't stay long. We need to reach the crystal springs before night fully falls. Lyria nodded, finishing her drink. She felt a little stronger, but exhaustion still weighed her down. As they continued, Kyle spoke quietly about the plants and animals around them. He explained how some could be used for medicine, how others were harmless but dangerous if provoked. Lyria listened intently, fascinated by his knowledge. You know a lot about this world, she said softly. You seem to understand it better than I do. Kyle shrugged. I study it. I observe. I try to understand. You have to respect a place to survive in it. Lyria thought about that. Her people often relied on instinct and tradition, but Kale's careful observation and thoughtfulness had kept them alive today. She felt a new respect forming, not just for him, but for humans in general. By nightfall, they found a small clearing and set up a temporary rest area. Kale built a small fire, careful to keep it contained and safe. The warm light chased away the shadows and the sound of the crackling flames was comforting. Lyria sat beside him, feeling safer than she had since the poison first took hold. Rest now, Kyle said. We'll continue at first light. The crystal springs aren't far, but the journey will be dangerous. You need your strength, Lyria nodded. She looked at him silently, thinking about what he had done. He had risked his own blood, faced predators, and guided her through the forest, all for her. No Veyari had ever shown such courage for another being outside their own kind. As sleep pulled her under, she realized something important. She trusted this human. More than she had trusted anyone in her life. More than she had ever thought possible. Kale kept watch through the night, ensuring no predators came near. He thought about the journey ahead, the poison that still lingered in Lyria's veins, and the challenge of guiding her to the crystal springs. But he was determined. He had made a choice to help her, and he would not let anything stop him. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the alien forest, two beings from different worlds shared a fragile bond. One was a Veyari, poisoned and vulnerable. The other was a human, brave and selfless. Together they had faced the first trials of the forest, survived and begun a journey that would test their courage, trust, and the limits of their abilities, and so, the first day of their journey ended, not with victory but with hope. Hope that the crystal springs could finish the healing, hope that their strange alliance could survive the dangers ahead, hope that trust could grow between two species that had always been told to fear each other. Tomorrow they would face the unknown again. But for tonight, Lyria was alive, and for the first time since the poison began, she truly believed that she might survive. The sun rose slowly over the alien forest, casting pale golden light across the misty ground. Lyria stretched carefully, feeling the lingering effects of the poison in her veins. Her body was stronger than yesterday, but she still had to move cautiously. Kyle was already awake, examining the terrain ahead with sharp eyes. "Morning," he said quietly. "We need to continue. The crystal springs aren't far, but the path is dangerous." Lyria nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her limbs. She took a deep breath and followed him. Every step through the thick undergrowth tested her strength, but she refused to slow down. She owed her life to this human, and she would not give up. As they moved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder. Mist clung to the trees, turning everything into pale shapes. Strange sounds echoed around them. Distant growls, rustling leaves, and the soft thud of unseen creatures moving. Lyria's heart raced with every sound, but Kale's calm presence kept her steady. "This way," he whispered, pointing to a narrow path winding between giant roots. "It's safer than the open ground, though not easy to walk." Lyria followed carefully, her steps slow and deliberate. The roots twisted and turned, creating natural obstacles. At one point, she slipped and nearly fell into a dark pit, but Kale caught her just in time. "Careful," he said, steadying her. "The forest has traps. Not all are natural," Lyria shivered. She realized that this forest was alive in more ways than one. It was beautiful, yes, but full of hidden dangers. And yet with Kale beside her, she felt safer than she had since the poison first took hold. Hours passed. They moved through thick fog, strange plants brushing against their skin. Some were harmless, but others had thorns or released fine powders that irritated the eyes and throat. Kale used his knowledge of the forest to guide them, avoiding hazards and pointing out safe paths. "You're very knowledgeable," Lyria said, breaking the silence. "You understand this forest." "More than I do," Kyle smiled faintly. "I observe, I learn. You have to respect the place if you want to survive in it." Lyria considered his words. Her people had relied on instinct and tradition for centuries. Humans, she realized, used observation, learning, and reasoning. That combination of courage and intelligence was unusual and admirable. Suddenly, a loud rustle came from the trees above. Lyria froze. Kale crouched, scanning the branches. A large creature with leathery wings and glowing eyes swooped down toward them. Lyria screamed, trying to move, but Kale grabbed her arm. "Stay calm," he shouted. He raised his arms and made himself appear larger, blocking the creature's path. The predator paused midair, its gaze fixed on him. Kale didn't flinch. Slowly, the creature circled and landed on a nearby branch, its wings folding. It watched them, curious but not attacking. Lyria's heart pounded. How are you so brave?" she whispered. Kale shrugged, though his eyes never left the creature. "I focus on protecting you. Fear won't help either of us. Courage comes from knowing you have to act, no matter what." The rest of the morning passed in cautious movement. Lyria learned to follow Kale's lead, observing the forest as he did. She noticed subtle signs of danger, broken branches, disturbed soil, glowing tracks that she would have missed on her own. She realized that this journey was not just about reaching the crystal springs. It was about learning to survive in ways she had never imagined. By midday, they reached a fast-flowing river. The current was strong and jagged rocks lined the shore. Lyria looked at the water nervously. We can't cross here, she said, fear in her voice. Kale examined the river carefully. There's a safer place a little downstream, he said. It's shallow enough to cross, but we have to move quickly. He helped Lyria navigate the rocks, guiding her carefully as the water rushed past their feet. The current tugged at her legs, making her stumble, but Kale's steady grip kept her upright. Once across, Lyria sank onto the riverbank, gasping for breath. You did well, Kale said, smiling. The hardest part is over. But Lyria knew better. The poison was still in her body, and the forest around them was far from safe. Every step forward was a test, and every moment of rest was precious. As they continued, Lyria began to notice something else. Kale was not just brave and intelligent. He was thoughtful and patient. He never rushed her, never scolded her for weakness, and never treated her like she was helpless. Instead, he guided her with care, explaining dangers and showing her how to avoid them. You are different from the humans I have heard about, Lyria said quietly as they rested under a giant tree. Kale raised an eyebrow. Different how? Your people. They are said to be reckless, aggressive. You are careful, brave, kind. You risk yourself to save me, a stranger. Why? Kale looked at her seriously. Because it's the right thing to do. Because helping someone shouldn't depend on who they are. Courage isn't just fighting. It's standing up when someone needs you, even if it's risky. Lyria was silent, reflecting on his words. She had never considered that bravery could mean more than physical strength or skill. This human had risked his blood, his safety, and his comfort, all to save her. She felt something unfamiliar. Gratitude, yes, but also admiration and perhaps trust. Their rest was brief. As they continued, the terrain grew steeper. The trees twisted and crowded. Strange luminous plants glowed faintly in the mist. Lyria reached out to touch one, and a soft pulse of light spread across her fingertips. Kale watched her carefully. Those plants? They're harmless, but they can attract predators, he warned. We must keep moving. Lyria nodded, suddenly aware of how dangerous even the most beautiful things in the forest could be. She realized that survival required constant awareness, quick thinking, and courage, all of which Kale had in abundance. By late afternoon, fatigue pressed heavily on Lyria. Her steps grew slower, her breath heavier. Kale noticed immediately and slowed his pace. We're close, he said. Just a little further. You can do this. The forest opened into a wide valley, the air shimmering with heat and mist. In the distance, Lyria thought she could see sparkling water, the crystal springs. Her heart leapt. The healing rituals of her kind were near. She would survive. But as they approached, the valley shifted. Strange creatures emerged from the shadows, moving in packs. Their eyes glowed red and they made low, threatening sounds. Lyria froze in terror. Kyle stepped in front of her. Stay behind me, he said calmly. We'll get through this. The creatures moved closer, circling them. Kale raised his voice and shouted, waving his arms. The largest creature paused, sizing him up. Kale held his ground, unflinching. Slowly, the creatures backed away, unwilling to challenge his courage. Lyria stared in disbelief. She had never seen anyone face danger with such calm and determination. The human beside her was fearless, not because he was reckless, but because he was brave in the truest sense. He acted when it mattered, for the sake of others. By nightfall, they reached a smaller stream near the crystal springs. Exhausted, Lyria sank to the ground. Kale knelt beside her, checking her pulse and ensuring she was safe. You're strong, he said softly. Stronger than you know. The poison is weaker now, thanks to your endurance. Tomorrow, we finish this journey. Lyria looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude, amazement, and something deeper. She had always feared humans. But now she saw them differently. One human, Kyle, had changed her perspective forever. As they rested under the faint glow of the twin moons, Lyria felt a quiet hope stir within her. The crystal springs were near, and with Kale's help she would survive. More than that, she had discovered something unexpected. Humans could be courageous, kind, and selfless in ways she had never imagined. And as the forest around them whispered and shifted in the night, Lyria and Kale prepared for the final part of their journey. The moment when her healing would begin, and their bond would be tested in ways neither of them had yet imagined. The first light of dawn filtered through the forest canopy, casting a soft glow over the crystal springs. The air was damp but filled with a strange energy, as if the water itself pulsed with life. Lyria's legs shook as she tried to stand, but Kale was immediately at her side, steadying her. "We made it," he said softly. "You're safe now. The healing springs are just ahead." Lyria looked around, her eyes wide with awe. The crystal springs were more beautiful than any description she had ever heard. Water shimmered in soft shades of blue and green, reflecting the light of the twin suns. Strange flowers floated on the surface, their petals glowing faintly. Lyria felt a strange pull in her chest, a mix of fear, hope, and relief. Kale guided her closer to the edge of the springs. "Sit here. Let the water do its work. But the ritual is not simple. I will need to help you." Lyria swallowed, her throat dry. She had been through so much. The poison, the forest, the predators. But now, standing on the edge of the sacred water, she realized this was the most important part. One mistake could cost her life. You will help?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kale nodded. "I promised. I will not let anything happen to you. But you must trust me completely." Lyria hesitated for a moment. The memory of his blood, his courage in the forest, and his unwavering presence gave her the courage to speak. "I trust you," she whispered. Kale smiled faintly. "Good, then let's begin." The ritual required more than just immersion in the water. Lyria's species used a combination of sacred herbs, precise movements, and the presence of a willing ally. Kyle listened carefully as Lyria instructed him, explaining each step with precision. He followed her instructions without hesitation, his focus unwavering. "First the water," Lyria said, her hands trembling slightly. "Place your hands in the spring and let the energy flow into me." Kyle knelt beside her, dipping his hands into the water. He followed her movements carefully, ensuring the flow of energy matched the rhythm she instructed. Lyria felt the warmth spread from the spring through her hands and into her veins. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever felt. The poison, though still present, began to retreat. "Now, the herbs," Lyria said, handing him delicate, glowing plants. "Place them on my skin in a circle. Each one must touch the other perfectly." Kale arranged the herbs with careful precision, his fingers steady despite the complexity. Lyria's pulse quickened as the circle completed. The water shimmered brighter, reacting to the combined energy of the springs, the herbs, and Kale's presence. Lyria could feel the poison shrinking, weakening. She gasped with relief, but the ritual was not complete. Lyria instructed Kale to take a small amount of his blood, again, and allow it to mix with the water. This part was crucial. The enzymes in human blood worked with the Veyari's natural energy to fully neutralize the poison. Kale hesitated for only a moment, then cut his palm again, letting a few drops fall into the spring. Lyria watched in amazement as the water reacted instantly, swirling and glowing with vibrant light. The warmth spread rapidly through her body. Pain and weakness melted away, replaced by a steady, comforting strength. "Feel it?" Kale asked softly. "Yes," Lyria whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "It's working. I can feel it leaving me." The ritual continued for hours. Lyria's strength returned slowly but steadily. Kale remained by her side, guiding her movements, ensuring every step was perfect. He never wavered, never grew tired, and never complained. Lyria realized that he had risked everything, not just for her survival, but for her trust and comfort. As the sun climbed higher, the ritual reached its climax. Lyria rose from the water, feeling the poison completely gone. Her body felt stronger than it had ever been. Her eyes shone with life, and her movements were fluid and confident. She turned to Kale, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in her gaze. "You saved me," she said softly. "Not just from the poison, but from fear. From everything." Kyle shook his head. "You saved yourself, too. I only helped guide you. Your courage got you here." Lyria smiled faintly, though tears threatened to fall. She had always believed humans were reckless and self-centered, focused only on their own survival. But Kale had shown her something different. He had risked himself for someone he barely knew. He had faced dangers that would have terrified most, and he had never wavered in his determination to protect her. The forest around them seemed to respond. The mist lifted slightly, sunlight glinting on the water. Birds and creatures emerged from hiding, watching quietly. It was as if the forest itself recognized the success of the ritual, the courage of the human, and the resilience of the Veyari. Lyria stepped out of the spring fully healed, her body glowing with energy. She turned to Kale. I cannot thank you enough. Your courage, your blood, your presence. It has changed my life. Kale smiled faintly. You don't need to thank me. Seeing you alive and well is enough. That's all I wanted. For the first time, Lyria felt a deep connection with a human. Not just trust, but something stronger. She realized that humans, though different, could be allies, protectors, and friends in ways her kind had never imagined. As they rested by the edge of the crystal springs, Lyria looked around at the water, the glowing plants, and the peaceful forest. She realized that her journey was more than survival. It was learning, understanding, and building trust between two species that had long been separate. Kyle watched her quietly, sensing the change in her. He had risked his life, guided her through danger, and helped her survive a poison that could have killed her. And yet he felt no regret. Every moment had been worth it. Lyria broke the silence. Why would you do all this for me? You risked your blood, your safety, everything. Kale looked at her seriously. Because it's right. Because courage isn't just about facing danger. It's about choosing to act for others when it matters most. You are alive because of that choice. I would do it again. Lyria stared at him, understanding dawning in her mind. Humans were not just strong or clever. They were capable of empathy, selflessness, and courage in ways her kind rarely saw. Kale had risked everything for someone not even his own kind. Night fell slowly over the crystal springs. The water reflected the twin moons, glowing softly. Lyria sat beside Kale, feeling stronger, safer, and more alive than she had in days. She realized that this journey, the poison, the forest, and the ritual had taught her more than she had ever learned from her elders. Trust, courage, and selflessness were not just abstract ideas, they were real, powerful, and could change lives. Kale had shown her that. As they sat quietly, the forest around them calm and peaceful, Lyria knew one thing for certain: she would survive. And more than that, she would never forget the human who had risked everything to save her. The journey was not over, but the greatest danger, the poison, was gone. Lyria's strength had returned. Her trust in Kale had grown, and a bond between human and Veyari had been forged, one that neither species had ever expected. Tomorrow, they would leave the crystal springs and face the next challenges together. But tonight they could rest, knowing that courage, trust, and selflessness had won the day. For the first time, Lyria smiled freely, without fear. And Kyle, watching the soft glow of the springs, knew that he had made a difference that might change more than one life. Perhaps even the understanding between two species. The crystal springs sparkled in the moonlight. The forest hummed quietly, and two beings from different worlds rested together, healed and united by courage. The morning sun shimmered over the crystal springs, reflecting off the glowing water and bathing the forest in golden light. Lyria stretched carefully, feeling every part of her body renewed. The poison was gone. Her strength had returned. She could move freely without pain or weakness, and the fatigue that had weighed her down for days had vanished. Kyle was already awake, scanning the forest for any signs of danger. His eyes softened when he saw Lyria standing fully healed, her posture strong and confident. "You're ready," he said quietly. "The journey back will be easier now, but we must stay alert. The forest is still unpredictable." Lyria nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude toward him. I'm ready," she said, her voice calm but firm. She paused, looking at Kyle. "Thank you. For everything. Your blood, your courage, your patience. You saved me." Kyle shook his head. "You saved yourself too. I only guided you, but I'm glad I could help." She studied him carefully. There was something about humans that she had never understood fully, until now. Humans were brave, yes, but their bravery was different from hers. It was not just skill or strength. It was choice. They chose to act, to risk themselves for others even when the cost was high. Kale had chosen to save her. He had risked his life, and yet he had never hesitated. Lyria realized how little her people understood humans. Stories often spoke of humans as reckless and selfish, but Kale had shown her something else entirely. He had shown her that humans could be selfless, intelligent, and courageous in ways the Veyari had never seen. As they began their journey back through the forest, Lyria felt a strange confidence. She moved with purpose, keeping close to Kale, learning from his every step. The forest, once a place of fear, now seemed alive with possibilities. Every rustle, every shadow was a test, but she no longer felt helpless. She felt capable, strong, and supported. Hours passed as they navigated the dense undergrowth. Strange creatures peeked from the trees, but Lyria no longer feared them. Kale had taught her to observe carefully, to move deliberately, and to face danger calmly. Together they moved with confidence, a strange but powerful alliance forming between them. At one point, a sudden roar echoed through the trees. Lyria froze, remembering the predator that had attacked them before, but Kale stood firm, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We'll move slowly." The roar came again, louder this time. From the shadows emerged a massive creature, its eyes glowing in the dim light. Lyria's pulse quickened, but she stayed behind Kyle, trusting his judgment. He raised a hand, and the creature paused, observing them. Slowly, without fear, Kale stepped forward, using calm and steady movements to show they meant no harm. The creature finally backed away, disappearing into the forest. Lyria let out a shaky breath, amazed. Kale had faced danger without fear, using intelligence and courage rather than force. She realized that this was the kind of bravery humans possessed, a bravery that could inspire trust and loyalty. As they continued, Lyria spoke quietly, her voice filled with wonder. "Kale, why would you risk so much for someone not your own kind?" Kale looked at her seriously. "Because it's the right thing to do. Courage isn't just about fighting. It's about choosing to help when it matters, even if it's risky. Today, I made that choice for you, and I would do it again." Lyria's heart swelled with admiration. She had never imagined that a human could be so selfless. The Veyari valued survival above all else, but Kale had shown her a different way, a way where trust, empathy, and courage mattered as much as skill or instinct. By evening, they reached the edge of the forest where familiar terrain began to appear. Lyria's homeworld lay beyond, and she could feel the presence of her people growing stronger. But she also knew that she had changed. The journey, the poison, the forest, and the crystal springs had taught her more than she had ever learned from her elders. She turned to Kale. You have changed how I see humans," she said softly. "I used to fear them. I thought they were reckless, dangerous, selfish, but you showed me something else. Courage, kindness, selflessness." Kale smiled faintly. "Humans are many things, just like your people. But some of us choose to be brave and kind. Today I chose to act, and you survived because of your courage too." Lyria nodded, feeling a deep sense of respect and trust. She realized that humans were not just strong or clever. They were capable of empathy, selflessness, and courage in ways her kind rarely saw. Kale had risked everything for her, and she would never forget it. As night fell, they made camp near a small river. The stars reflected on the water, and the forest was quiet except for the gentle rustle of leaves. Lyria and Kale sat together, sharing quiet moments of reflection. "You know," Kale said, breaking the silence, "I've been on many worlds, seen many species, but today was different. I never expected to meet someone like you." Lyria looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "And I never expected a human to save me like this. I feel grateful, more than I can say. I will never forget your courage, Kyle." Kale shrugged, smiling. "You don't have to. Just survive. That's enough for me." Lyria laughed softly, the sound light and free. For the first time in days, she felt completely at ease. The fear that had gripped her since the poison had taken hold was gone. She was alive, strong, and aware of the remarkable bond that had formed between her and the human who had saved her. Over the next few days, they traveled together toward her settlement. Lyria moved with confidence, no longer burdened by weakness or fear. Kyle remained vigilant, ensuring her safety, but now they moved as equals. She had learned much from him: courage, patience, and the importance of selflessness. And he too had learned from her the strength of will, resilience, and the grace of her species. When they finally reached the outskirts of her homeworld, Lyria paused to look at Kale. You are welcome here," she said. "My people will see what you have done. They may not understand fully, but they will respect you." Kale smiled faintly. "Thank you. That means more than you know. But I didn't do it for respect. I did it because it was right." Lyria nodded, understanding completely. The human had acted with courage and kindness, not for reward, but because it was the right thing. She had witnessed something rare and powerful, something that would remain with her forever. As they approached her settlement, Lyria's people came out to greet them. Some were cautious, others curious, but all were amazed to see her alive and well. Lyria introduced Kale, simply explaining what he had done. Her people listened in awe as she recounted the journey, the forest, the poison, and the crystal springs. When she finished, Kyle stood quietly, humble and calm. The Veyari could see the courage in his eyes, the strength in his presence, and the selflessness in his actions. Even those who had doubted humans began to understand. Lyria turned to Kale, her heart full. "You have shown my people, and me, that humans are capable of great courage and kindness. I will never forget you." Kyle smiled softly. "I will never forget you either, Lyria. You trusted me, and together we survived. That's what matters." The night fell over the settlement, stars shining brightly above. Lyria felt a deep sense of peace. The poison was gone, the journey was complete, and a new understanding had formed. Not just between her and Kale, but between two species that had always been told to fear each other. For the first time, Lyria truly believed in the strength of courage, trust, and selflessness, and she knew that humans, with their bravery and willingness to risk themselves for others, could be allies, protectors, and friends in ways her people had never imagined. Kyle and Lyria stood side by side, looking at the stars above. The forest behind them had been conquered, the poison had been defeated, and a bond had been forged that would last beyond this journey. In that quiet moment, Lyria realized something profound. Life was not only about survival, it was about choice, courage, and the willingness to help others, even when it was risky. And humans embodied that truth perfectly. The journey had ended, but its lessons would remain forever. And in the heart of the Veyari settlement, under the glowing stars, two beings from different worlds shared a silent understanding, a promise of trust, courage, and the remarkable potential of cooperation between species. Lyria finally smiled fully, without fear or hesitation, and Kale, standing beside her, knew that this journey had changed both their lives forever.